I'm going to open the Early Education Policy Council meeting at this time. It is 6:17. I would like to start with the Secretary's report from last month.
So the minutes are in your packet. Well, actually, it was not last month, but 2 weeks ago.
A couple minutes ago. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask. I would entertain a motion for acceptance.
I move to accept the minutes.
A second. Any discussion? It's been moved and seconded. Those in favor? Aye. All right. On to the treasurer's report.
Okay, I'm going to report there's nothing, no additional funds have been spent on policy council since we talked last. So until we get the rest of our funding released by the government, we still have $660 to work with.
And writing for the budget report, no changes as well?
On the budget report, we are on track. Spending is on track for what we would expect at this time. I do have the reports we can discuss around.
Well done, Brenda.
Your first time, remember?
So you got you guys have copies too. One more. Okay. That's all I have.
You need a motion to accept the invoice.
I need a motion to accept the report.
I move to accept the report.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion or questions?
And you guys can read your
Oh,
credit card report.
all right, all in favor?
Aye. So the credit card report is going around, and that's something that is required by Head Start regulations that we take a look at to make sure that we're not shopping in places they shouldn't be.
That we're not shopping when we've been buying things that we should not, and that we're keeping current fee payments, and not falling behind.
What's the push-up bra for? There's a push-up bra.
Okay, that happens because the credit card is used by Head Start program, but also we have other family assistance things that are happening, and that could be for a mom that's,
And that's an excellent question.
Because that's not acceptable.
that's correct.
Just like to keep you on your toes.
All right, so we'll move, while that's going on, we'll move into the director's report.
So, since we last met just a few weeks ago, we have been conducting interviews for the Family Services Manager position, and I will have a recommendation for you when we get to that agenda item later on. I was at a Parent-Child Center network meeting on Friday, and there was news that we will be receiving an increase in the child care subsidy rates, so that will be helpful. We've been struggling with maximizing the benefit that we could actually receive. We were at a 40% recovery rate with the co-payments that we are we're required to collect from families, so that's really some of the challenge. The good news is that we applied for Strengthening Families funds for 1 more year, and there were 64 applicants from the state. 30 were awarded, and we were one of those 30. So that's great news. We have 1 more year of Strengthening Families funds, and that money goes to support our behavior specialists. So we're happy to have that. And we'll be working this year to figure out how we can keep that going once the Strengthening Families funds are no longer available. And then the other big piece is that we do have for you a submission for COLA, the 2.6% increase for staff salaries. And there is also a pot of money available in that same declaration that that enables Head Start programs to provide full-day programming and year-round programming, which, of course, you know we already do. And we do that by blending our state and federal funds. And now it appears that there may be an opportunity to actually use more Head Start monies to pay for our longer day, our full day. So Brenda and I are scheduled to have a conversation with our regional staff in the next couple of weeks to explore that opportunity, which may offset that piece that I just talked about, with only recouping the 40% on the fee. So it's a juggling game, but we continue to fly forward, and that's basically what's been happening for the last couple of weeks.
The families have been really excited to be back full time. You've gotten more. Is your enrollment?
So that's a
coming
great question. Actually, as I did report to you last month, we are struggling with under enrollment in Westminster in our Head Start classrooms because families moved when we went to double sessions, and actually those slots will be filled when we transition some of the 3-year-olds into the early Head Start children into the Head Start slots, and then that will, the trickle down effect will be that we'll have openings in the other classrooms, which of course we have a waiting list for, and so we're not anticipating a challenge.
So yeah,
keeping the slots filled.
If you look at the report, it was like 6 over last month with no notes, but this time we have 4, so it's going down. Plus, there is a plan for those 4, as Deb just said. So we should be good.
I know, it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's great to have that back and running.
It is, and I actually have a recommendation for hiring of that last teacher position tonight, so we are 100% staffed.
Nice. That's what was right.
Yes.
And what about here?
We still have a couple of openings here, but we actually, the forecast looks good, and we haven't, it's been a whole year since we've been in a place where we're feeling pretty positive.
And moving on to parent committee reports, because I represent Westminster. At this time, we have not had any parental parent meetings or anything since our last meeting.
So you had asked me to mention, we did conduct our lockdown drills at all the sites today. For the rest of you, that's the first one we've done with children since I've been here. So we were all anticipating that, and the parents had asked us to keep them informed and involved. And I will say it went really, really smoothly. The teachers had strategies ready, and we didn't hear a peep out of the kiddos while we were in lockdown, which is awesome. Everybody moved quickly, efficiently, got where they were going. It was really awesome. We have some technical things to work out in terms of communication through the building so people can hear what's going on. But other than that, awesome.
I did hear feedback from Westminster Classroom 1 that theirs went well today.
Yeah, So it's
The
really
teachers
good.
did a great job. We had children here on the playground, and when the announcement was made, the teacher, and they were babies, the teachers came in, they looked for the first room that they could go in, which happened to be the human use, the HR office next to mine. And as Brenda said, not even a peep. They pulled out catalogs that had school supplies, and the kids were pretty enthralled with those, and so it went really well.
We have not met since last time we talked, but there was a number, I want to say 20-some parents and kids in the parade. That was discussed.
Yes.
I saw you all. How was that? So they were all wearing their tie-dye shirts, which we did at the last parent committee.
Good, that's great. Community representative report. Who'd like to start?
I guess that's me. Well, first, I apologize for being late. I was in Ludlow on a treasure hunt for some particular lumber, and I found it, but it was in a barn under a bunch of other stuff, so it took a while. I tried calling Jill, and I had a signal long enough to listen to your phone message, but then it was gone when I left my message. That was a mystery. So I apologize, but it looks like I got here just in time. Haven't got much to say. You've seen the minutes and the other reports. Things are smoothed out in terms of the staffing and getting back to full-day programs in Westminster. I think the only, so I don't have anything to report from the community or to the community. The only thing I wanted to mention with the school board is that the policy council, there's a lot of turnover in the policy council. And I think they've been stable for a while, and Piper's been here for a while, and I'm really glad that Holly's here all the time. A great resource. But just one of the things we might want to focus on is how to keep people friends. Obviously, if your child in daycare for 1 year or less, or even for 2, there's going to be turnover. But just something to focus on, a little more stability, so it can play a bigger role in the harder work of getting resources and getting the legislature and taxpayers to be happy to pay what we really need to have to make this program full.
So as far as the WSECU area, which is where I work, but Westminster, all those children go that way. So we've completed all of our kindergarten transition, so all the kids heading off to kindergarten have that opportunity. The preschool applications are out for Act 166. There is a slight increase. I don't have the dollar figure right off the top of my head, but it is a little bit of increase from last year. And on June 20th, we have our annual kickoff to summer party, which is held at Cherry Hill, which is a huge party for families in our area to come to, and there's just lots to do, and every kid gets a book. Hopefully every kid will also get a ball, working on that part, but we definitely got the books, and it's just a fun way to start off the summer and start off the groups for the summer. That's really what I have.
So let's move on to old business.
Okay. So last month, I shared with you the announcement that we were eligible to apply for 2.6% COLA, and that amount is on the entire funded amount of our program. And Brenda has been working very diligently to prepare those numbers, and so we would like to bring forth for your approval tonight request to apply for the COLA. Brenda, maybe you have the total amount, which would enable every EES employee to receive at minimum a 2.6% increase in their salary. It also helps us to adjust our salary scale and make it a little more attractive.
So when I handed out the cost reports, the last page was this, which is a summary of our application for the COLA funding. So you can see that there is $62,415 that we're going to be applying toward the salaries, as Deb says. They also gave us a little bit for our TNTA. And then, of course, anytime they give us more money, they ask that we give them more in kind in return. So there's another 16 grand of that we need to do. But this is a brief synopsis of what I'm going to be applying for. And as Deb said, every time the government gives us COLA, we put it into our people. Even though our healthcare costs go up, even though rent goes up and all of that, we still choose purposefully to put this money toward our people. And in addition to the 2.6 that the government is giving us, we are able to, as I was alluding to, put a little bit more of our own money to that. So the salary scale is being adjusted this year. The minimum for people that are brand new to the agency, just been with us and get a smaller amount, which is just slightly over the 2.6, but up to other positions, especially in the direct service area, we are supplementing that with more funds. So we're hoping that will. But we do need a signature from Liz, the policy council chair, and Jill, the board chair, that you are okay with us using all of our COVID hours for other people.
So do you want a motion from both groups and then an actual approval from both groups, right?
Yeah.
Liz, you should take it first.
So I would entertain a motion.
Any motion to approve the COLA funds?
I second.
Second. Okay, somebody already did.
If I can get your signature.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And then for us, although technically do I have to call it in the order then?
Oh, we're not voting yet.
So I technically am calling the Brattleboro Town School Board into order, although we've been, and so I entertain a motion to approve the use of COLA funds entirely for salaries.
So moved. Seconded.
And all in favor?
Aye. In session 6:34. And then the June 25th self-assessment.
So again, a reminder that that's right around the corner. We hope to see you all there. We'll be sending you an invite very, very soon. Please put it on your calendar to join us for our annual self-assessment at Madison's Orchard, which is closer to you and Molly. Sorry, Piper. It'll be a great day, so please, and board members too.
It starts at noon?
At noon?
Noon to 4.
Noon to 4. So we have lunch, and we may be finished before noon, but we should carve out that much time.
For new business stuff, do we need to go to executive session?
No, we don't, and we actually do have to, we can put it under other, but the shared governance.
Yes, just gonna put it on there. Let's move into new business.
So, as we implied, the 2.6% COLA will also help raise the salary scale. And are we ready to discuss that tonight, Brenda, or do you want to distribute it and then have you think about it? Or I don't actually have the scale with me.
I think just what we've said is
Across the board.
across the board, the minimum that someone's getting, because they've been here for a short amount of time, and it is the COLA, which is 2.6 to 2.8. So
Except for the director who's getting 2.5.
the director's getting 2.5 because the director's salary is tied to the school board instead of the EES salary scale, so she goes with what they do. But we are in the salary scale for the direct service personnel, teachers and service workers. Any of the teachers, the assistants, the teachers, the coordinator, the site supervisors. We are trying to do more in the range of 5, 6, or 7% on those salaries. So it'll be a significant bump, and that should really help us recruit and retain the ones that we have.
Can we see some time to comparison between what DES employees with the whole benefit package, and how they compare to the WSESU?
Yeah, we can do that. And also, we have to remember that our funders treat us in the childcare arena. So we get funding for that scale, which obviously our teachers are professional and they do a great job with our kiddos. So we do want very much to get closer to the education scale.
Yeah, so
So
that's
the
like.
benefits are the same, right?
Right.
Benefits are.
They are.
Yes, they
They
are.
are.
Okay, because I know at one point that
They
they
were.
were different.
The benefit package has always been equivalent or if not a little better.
Yeah,
than-
and that's what I was inferring, that it was,
Right.
that it was better,
Right.
just to compensate for
Right.
the pay.
That's right. And also, a couple of years ago, we did make a huge gain in our teacher salary specifically, so that we were moving the teacher's salary to an entry-level position within the school district. The difference being that our teachers work 12 months and the school district teachers work 9.5 months. And so even though they may have made the same pay, they were working more days. So we're constantly striving to
Equal out.
equal that out. And I do have one copy with my scribbled notes on the back that, of what the changes to the salary scale are with this proposed increase. But what Brenda said is absolutely accurate. The absolute least amount would be a 3% increase. Now, that doesn't mean that employees would receive that because they may already be on or above the scale. This is for hiring purposes. So it ranges from 3 to 4, 5, and 6%. But we can definitely, it's time to check in with these increases to see where we fall.
It'd be a nice thing in our agenda, maybe for
Yeah.
August.
Uh-huh.
Have a little more time to look at that.
Yeah.
Say, Deb,
Uh-huh.
I would love to have a copy of that wage thing and the benefits.
Okay.
You can email them unless there's
I
a
will.
machine here, you can run them off right now.
I'll send it all to you in a package so that you have it all, because the benefits, I want you to,
Okay.
understand.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
You'll send it to everybody.
I will.
Yeah. And then we can put that on to discuss and look and compare in August at our
Okay.
meeting.
So, I think that's really captured in the motion that you made. This is just, kind of honing on the fact that we're bumping up the salary scale as well. Okay? I have some hiring committee recommendations, and as I promised, one of them is the last vacancy in Westminster. We are so excited. Actually, my HR person said to our education manager, okay, don't drool, stop drooling, because these were such strong candidates. So, the teacher in Westminster in the early Head Start classroom is Chloe Wolfram. And Chloe has a bachelor's in early childhood experience working with groups of young children, including those enrolled in Head Start. So she comes to us from another Head Start program. She ranked as exceptional with her 3 reference checks. And we are hoping to hire her as soon as we get all of the pre-hiring documents in our hands. Do you want me to go through? I have 3 recommendations. So Chloe is the only teacher. I have a sub, and then of course our family services manager. The substitute teacher is Morgan Roy, and she, I understand, would be exclusively available in Westminster. She prefers to be in that community. She's actually going to be graduating, so we'll wait until she does that before we call her for her first day of duty. She has taken early childhood classes at the Career Center and has been a volunteer in our classrooms here. She is responsible, reliable, friendly, and she works well with children and adults, and her 3 references said she was exceptional. And lastly, I have a recommendation for our new Family Services Manager, replacing Carol Castine, who has served EES in 24 years. So we will have a special event for her. You're all invited, hopefully you all have the invite. That's on June 26th here from 4 to 6. And I think I can say this, Carol doesn't know this, but Senator Brattleboro is coming to give her special commendations.
Nice.
I am really excited to recommend that Katie Everest be our new Family Services Manager. Katie is actually an EES employee. She's been here for 19 years as a Family Services Support Specialist. She is our enrollment and recruitment specialist, and we're a little worried about replacing her in that capacity. I won't say we're a little, we're a lot, because it takes a certain skill set that Katie has. It was a really robust interview process. We did have an external candidate who was very strong. We conducted 2 rounds of interviews. The first one was, with questions, and the second one, we really targeted scenarios and put these folks on the spot to see how they would do with supervision and some of the challenges that come with the position. We had, I think, 6 members on the panel, and Katie was the rising star and rising candidate. So I gladly recommend that she be hired starting on Monday. She'll be working alongside Carol for the last few weeks in June so that Katie can really shadow and understand. At the same time, she'll still have her foot in her current position, and she'll be helping. One of her first duties is to help replace the position that she's vacating. So again, Katie Everest is our new Family Services Manager.
And move to accept all 3.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Did you get any feedback from any of the, besides Katie, but like it was a long, hard time trying to fill that position, and you tried to advertise, you tried all these things. Was there anything that you found?
This was a neat, I advertised for 1 day, and we got a really strong candidate.
In the same place that you had been, it just happened to be different people were looking at it? It wasn't like you did different advertising?
It was
or anything?
no, I mean, I put it in the papers, and we do that.
Yeah.
It was one Saturday, and I just, and actually, the candidate came to us from Keene State and had been employed there for 10 years, but there is a drop in college enrollment. And so instructors are looking for other work, and this is a national issue.
I was just curious, if it was something you tried to figure out where.
It was luck, it was sheer luck.
Yeah, well, good luck.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to other, and that's going to be the shared governance portion. So I'm turning that over to you.
So we're turning basically over to you.
All right.
Okay, so the documents that you have, and thank you to Barb Malkowski for picking this up, are, one of the requirements of Head Start programming is that we review the relationship between the board and policy council on an annual basis. And that there is agreement about, and there's certainly, the responsibilities of the 2 boards are predicated by the Head Start performance standards. So they're laid out for us, but there are additional pieces. One is about how decision making happens, and the other is about how conflict would be resolved if there were ever that case. And by that we mean if there was disagreement with a recommendation, if policy council and the school board could not agree on, say, the budget, the annual budget that gets, the refunding packet that includes the budget, then there has to be an articulated agreement about how that conflict would be resolved. long ago, the school board and policy council, before my time, actually came up with the agreement that is in your packet around resolving conflict. So it's time for us to just take a look at this and to make sure that there are not any changes or whether there's agreement about continuing to operate under these procedures. So let's see, how should I proceed? There are, in your packets, of course, there is the one that I just referenced about resolving conflict and procedures for resolving internal disputes. There's a document entitled Procedure Governance, Sharing of Information, and I think that we might want to take a look at that because I think that needs to have some updating. And then shared decision-making, that can also be updated because with the newer performance standards, some of those pieces have changed so that there is some of the finer details are no longer being required to have approval from either policy council or the board. And the decision, the hiring, at what point the hiring of the director and the financial officer were the shared responsibility of policy council and the board, but now those positions are the primary responsibilities of the board. There's a little change there. So I don't know if you, do you want to take the time to walk through these now, or should we digest these?
I think we need to all read them and
Yeah.
then come back to them.
Okay.
But I'm confused as to what this one of the conflict one. I thought right now, say that the discussion, like when we changed Westminster because we didn't have a teachers, the policy council flushed that all out and came to a conclusion, then sent it to us. Maybe I'm wrong. I thought we had the authority to override policy council if we wanted to. How does that work right now? Because I think reading this, I'm not clear. It says, should an unresolved conflict occur? And I guess that would be a conflict, maybe not?
Well, so that's a really good example, and ultimately, you're correct that you do have the authority to override or trump a decision like that. However, things like submitting the budget or submitting the annual refunding plan requires agreement from both boards. And honestly, the situation, I can't imagine that what you just articulated would ever go out that way, because I just know how, and we have a board member who sits on policy council, so there's really strong communication.
Right, so I guess I was surprised that there would be this resolving conflict within 7 days of the occurrence and all that, because
That comes from situations in the past, not specific to this community, but programs in my time where lawsuits were actually ensued, where the policy council and the board did not agree on the budget specifically, and it went to court. And so shortly after, the Administration of Children and Families issued the requirement that all grantee agencies and the policy councils would have conflict resolution policy that they must follow should things like that occur. So it was not relevant to our specific situation.
There are two different processes. One is conflicts between the policy council and the board, and we do wind up with the authority to decide that one. If it's an internal dispute, there's an impasse between us and the goes ultimately to the mediator. If you can't.
Yes, and so that, I mean, the case that you just, that might be a situation where that procedure would be helpful.
We have to figure out which
It does say,
procedure we
are you
need.
looking at this one, Jill?
let's look at the first one, it says we
It says step D is the school district has the final decision making.
At the next page, or the one in front of it, has a different process.
Yes. between Head Start Management and Policy Council. That one is not involving the
With the voting board. The next page down, it's not, doesn't have anything to do with the board, it's policy council and Head Start management. So it's Deb in the policy council, not the board.
that one is just more complicated.
Is this
Oh, yeah.
required by the government to have us review and approve officially?
It's already been approved.
Well, exactly, so do we need to
No.
review and reapprove, or?
No, but Barb's keen eye recognized that somewhere we said we would annually review this, and so that's why we're bringing it to you tonight.
One thought that goes through my head is with the announcement on Friday of what looks to be pretty much an impending merger, barring some drastic change, that we'd have to rewrite some of this anyway.
Yeah, because there isn't going to be a Brattleboro School District.
So I guess I would think that we could review it in anticipation, but then maybe it would come back to be done again, so it's spending lots of time on it.
Right,
But it's our duty though to make sure this is in place and everything.
yeah. So, do you know what Joe's, so there's a
law that says that we have to think about how to merge, and we're still in that process of how to merge school districts, and then
The same stuff I talked about a couple of years ago.
so the town school, this school board would not exist under what's come out as the recommendation that the Board of Education still has to decide if that's what they want to do. But in any case, I'm just thinking that it's still going to be our responsibility to make sure things are in order for whatever transpires.
Yeah, and I think the feds are gonna have something to say about what happens in this case. They'll probably do.
I've actually already approached them, and so there will be some changes if that were to come to fruition. So the grantee will change to the larger board. And I think your recommendation is wise, Jill. I think it would be good to have a conversation here about it, but should that merger actually happen, then that would be an opportunity from the get-go to establish the protocols and have you as the informed group.
So we wouldn't have to do an annual review, just tell everyone.
Right.
Food has something over here.
Yeah, on that page you were referring to about resolving conflict between Head Start and the school district. What jumps out at me, one problem is between C and D. C is sort of incomplete. It talks about, it says that you will go to a mediator or something or outside and will discuss proposed solutions and attempt to resolve. And that sort of leaves it up in the air. Attempt to resolve doesn't say, well, what if you do resolve it? If you do, does the school district still have the power to overrule that decision?
Well, that's the part of the resolution means that both parties agree to the thing.
The way that I read that, Spoon, is that you might bring in a mediator from our regional office who will work with both groups to try to attempt to resolve the
Yeah.
conflict. If it
Here's
doesn't,
here's the part that's missing, I feel. And I think of it as kind of analogous to when a town is proposing something in their town charter that is unique in the state. You know, town charters are approved by the legislature because the town charters then become statute themselves. And so the legislature is careful about what it approves. But the legislature also has some guidelines as to what it accepts or not. It just can't say, well, we don't like what this town is doing, and we have the power to reject it, so we will. They have, for instance, it has to be what a town is asking for would have to be opposed or contrary to something to existing state statute or to the Constitution. It would be unconstitutional. So essentially then, the legislature itself has some sort of restrictions And that's what's missing here. It doesn't give criteria for the school board to say, to have to produce a legitimate reason for rejecting a proposed solution that it doesn't like.
So I think
That-
that's the type of comments that we should all read and come up and think on that sort of level and come back to this. But I don't want to,
Okay,
I mean, I
it's a
think we're,
complicated question.
but I think we're just getting this for the first time today. We don't want to really delve in without a little time to at least read through it.
Okay. So on the idea that this was a joint conversation, can we say that at the next board meeting in August, there'll be a thorough vetting of this, and that information can come back, I'll bring that back to Policy Council.
And at the same time, Policy Council can review
Yeah.
and come back to us with anything that you see that seems strange. Does that work?
Yes.
I think they'll be meeting again, it sounds like in July.
Yeah.
So we can have those recommendations to discuss when we have our meeting on this.
Okay. Great.
So I'm going to put this on the agenda for August already. It's the salary comparison, the other one that's coming in. Is there anything more on your agenda?
We're still under other, so if nobody has anything else to bring up, then the policy council is all set and we'll be meeting again in July.
So you might want to officially adjourn your meeting and ours still stays on, I guess.
Anybody have anything? No? Then I'll take a motion to close the meeting.
I motion to close?
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
All in favor?
And thank you, children. Yes.
Thank you. And congratulations over here to the all This is the mother of the year.
2017.
Oh, here.
Well deserved.
Do you have the login? The wireless?
You know what? I texted my IT, it's a big dark secret.
Okay.
And I can't, the Wi-Fi. So, I'm sorry, I don't have.
Well, Comcast all out of Brattleboro, all the consultants. Okay, so we're bringing in everybody to the board. Selling comparison between ES employees and Brattleboro School District. And then review.
You're off, right?
Smile with the camera, dude. I gotta sit with my buddy, Jerry.
Come on over and sit down if you're first. You have one here. Kelsey, we officially started at 6:34.
Okay.
And you can just say policy council notes.
There was, wait, we had an action. We moved to accept the COLA increases.
Okay, hold on a second. Did I hear that we don't know the Wi-Fi password?
That's right.
We don't? Okay.
No.
We don't, it's the deep dark secret that shall remain so.
And I forgot to bring up my board reports.
Oh, well.
It's
Okay, would you like it?
We're trying to find it now.
Just read
I don't
it.
actually need it. I can find it on my.
Yeah.
It's one of those they send you and say.
Good luck. Oh, like 5 more?
It's a little, it is dark, it's really difficult to see because it's like right in front of your eyes.
There's a motion made by Jill.
You can do it for barn chores.
Are you ready?
That's what we need.
Oh wait, I'm on the wrong.
Okay, are we good?
I take them on Google Docs, so I can tell you this.
Okay.
Okay, so at this point, we normally recognize any visitors. I think we have a few over here. You guys want to identify yourselves? Introduce yourselves.
I'm Erica Solarian, the HCS Commissioner at Green Street School. I'm Kimberly Williams, I'm the nurse at Green Street School. Kate, Christine, parents, Kate counselor, Green Street School.
Excellent. So also, I think at this point, we usually have communication recognition, so I just wanted to start out with a little piece here. So the school board members, along with the Brattleboro Town Manager, Peter Elwell, were sent an anonymous letter over Memorial Day weekend. It was not sent to Superintendent Lyle Holliday, however, Vice Chair Kim Price immediately shared it with her. And Robin, I believe you've never received the letter, but I sent you on a copy. The letter raises several concerns. So during the past week and a half, I've been in direct communication with the Brattleboro Town School District's lawyer, whose name is Pietro Lynn. He is on retainer for us, and he was able to answer questions that various of you all have forwarded to me concerning the best ways to proceed. First, there was a question about whether this letter is a public document. So the letter is a complaint to the board about an existing employee, and Pietro assures me that since the letter goes to the job performance of employees and could thus be the basis of employee discipline, the letter does not fall into his definition of public document, and he quotes under 1 VSA section 317. It is exempt as personal document. Further, it concerns a confidential personnel matter involving district employees. Second, there's a question about the letter being written anonymously and our policy as to how to handle a complaint letter written without signatures. So we do have a policy that we do not publish anonymous complaints against a staff member. Accordingly, Pietro's opinion is that we not publicly read this letter during our meeting and not enter it into record. However, that doesn't mean that we can't respond to the letter. And at the same time, all of you have individually expressed some concerns about the issues raised in this letter. There were specific criticisms of the selection and hiring process for recently hired positions. They included discrepancies on credentials and the posted job requirements and the failure to disclose a familial relationship with an existing employee at the school. So after receiving the letter, the majority of the board members have expressed to me as chair a desire to hear more about the hiring process. And again, I have sought legal advice. I'm not even going to tell you how many hours I have into this for the last week. I wanted to know what we can do and cannot do. I also wish to have absolute clarity for all of us on the board regarding what can be discussed in open session and what cannot. So, for all of us to know. In open session, we can discuss the fact that we've received this anonymous complaint about the hiring process. That's why I'm bringing it up right this way. We can also talk through the process that we go through to hire any employee generically, including our normal processes for what happens when a candidate is related to someone in the school. We're a small town and these things happen. We can also discuss our expectations for disclosure to the board when an employee is involved in the process that may have bias for or against an applicant. However, as those of us who have read the letter already know, this particular matter goes to a specific hire and the complaint is against specific employees. And because that goes to the employee's job performance, we have to go into executive session to discuss any specifics. Also, if we wish to identify the employee or the candidates or talk about individual qualifications, we need to leave open session and vote on a motion to go into executive session. And in executive session, we can ask whomever we wish to stay and discuss the issues at hand. I've also asked for clarity about what actions and outcomes we as a board can expect or take. So first, as a board, we should know that the hiring is done and the contract is signed. There is no reversing the decision that was talked about in this letter sent to us. There's no rescinding the job offer. That's already been accepted after our last meeting. The position is filled. That's not up for discussion. Second, I remind us all that the board's role is not to micromanage employees. It is the superintendent's, and it's her role to manage the staff. The superintendent is responsible for all employee discipline, except for terminating principals and teachers. Pietro points out that it would be very normal for a board to ask Lyle to, quote, investigate, take specific disciplinary action as she desires and to report back to us. Unless we conclude that the termination of a teacher or a principal is necessary based on the information from Lyle as a board, we could choose to simply say to Lyle, deal with this and hear her resolutions at the next meeting. Pietro also clarified that by statute, only the board can fire the principal. All other discipline is up to the superintendent, principal, staff, whatever. Our lawyer, Pietro, further reminds us that that typically the board does not want to know a lot of the details in advance of any termination proceedings that would be possible, even if they're remotely possible, because we can also be thrust into the role of being the deciding body in connection with a contested hearing on whether there is a just cause to support termination of an employee. If we launch a full investigation ourselves, and should this complaint ever rise to the final level, we may lose our impartiality in any ultimate decision-making, which could render our determination to terminate or not void. That was a lot of legal speak. Hopefully that made sense to everybody. To be clear, as we go forward then, remember that we can only publicly discuss the generalities of the situation. We cannot discuss the merits or the demerits of any candidates in open session. We would have to go into executive session to discuss a personnel matter, considering the hiring of an employee and potential employee misconduct in a hiring process if we wish to discuss the specifics. Also, should an employee wish to not discuss something in executive session, the employee can decide to waive executive session rights. So, all of that. Are there any questions from the board at this point on these topics? That was a lot, I know. And I've worked hard to try to succinctly get it down.
I wish you had sent that around so I could have, instead of having to digest, to understand and digest everything that you said on the spot, I would have been familiar with it and could have more easily.
I think it's not appropriate to send that type of information before because it has to be done in open session. That's why I purposely didn't send it around.
You mean the legal opinion?
Yeah, and the explanations that I put out here. These are the types of things we need to be very careful as a board, and I cautioned that as emails were flying because things have to remain in open session. The only thing that can be discussed on the email conversations is sharing of a document that's going to be discussed at the actual meeting. I suppose you could make a case of that, but it's not, I don't know. Maybe, Spoon may be right. I'm in uncharted territory for myself on all of this too. But we can't discuss our feelings about anything that comes to us or our feelings of how something should play out or what role should be taken by any person or how things work while we're in email conversations. Thus, that's why I thought this should come to open session and be said here. If you ask a lawyer, maybe they'd tell you something different. I honestly didn't ask for all that. Any other questions from board members on anything?
I guess my only question would be, as you referenced that part of the letter was about a familial relationship, is there any existing policy on how and when such relationships are disclosed within a hiring process?
I have not found any.
And is that something that you think that there should be to have transparency, that there should be an official
So,
rule on that?
I think this has taught us a lot. I want to start by saying I did know that there was a relationship and didn't say anything because I knew the process that had happened, and we're going to talk about the process. I knew that there was not any interference in the process through the relationship. But since then, I have put together an informational sheet to send to all, not just Brattleboro Town, all administrators, saying, here's the information that I need from you when you made a decision on the candidate that you want to propose to the board, so that when moving forward, if there are any questions about any of the candidates, we have the information and we present it to you.
So like, you would be able to then say like, this is the person that's being suggested for hire, we're aware there's a family relationship, but these several steps have been taken to create a lack of conflict of interest or whatever.
Or the perception of nepotism or any.
Right, whatever the correct
oddity
wording
hire.
is on that.
So you're saying, Kyle,
Yes.
Lyle, that there was no policy or that there is no?
I I have not seen a policy for Brattleboro Town about any hiring of relatives, no. We do know that, just out of common sense, that if there is a relationship, then we recuse ourselves from making any of those kind of decisions. And that's what happened in this case, that the people that were related were not involved in the decisions. But I have not seen a Brattleboro Town or a BU6 WSESU policy that.
So am I to take that to mean that when you were apprised of the situation and suggested or recommended to step out of the second part?
They need to
Oh,
not
okay,
mention.
I'm sorry. To step out of it, you thought that that would satisfy the nepotism issue?
Absolutely. He had no decision, in who was hired.
Just 1 second.
Okay.
Can you, when you, Rich, when you do it, you're gonna edit that, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the reason there's no policy is that it's, if there is a conflict of interest, you have, or the appearance of a conflict of interest, you have to take steps. So to have a policy that says if there's a conflict of interest, you have to take steps, it's redundant.
But I think it would be good to have that redundant policy anyway, so that if something comes to people in the community that they're just seeing this was the outcome, they don't have any idea what our process was, then they can be shown, well, actually, this is the rule and this is what we did.
Right.
Even though it seems obvious to do it, I think that to have it as a stated policy would just provide more comfortableness to community members witnessing these.
I think it's probably
Relationships.
in the professional code of ethics as well.
It's a small town. I mean, I can't swing a stick without hitting a relative sometimes. So, I mean, it's something we definitely.
So I have
It probably won't be the last time this situation occurs, and it probably isn't the first time either.
We have many people that are related to each other that are hired within WSESU. And as we did with this case, we make sure that the people that are on the hiring committees are not related to the people that are being interviewed.
I'm not sure that that is enough, because this anonymous letter had sources. I presume it came in anonymously because some of the people in that group were so close to the situation that they feared reprisals by signing that letter.
That's a big assumption, though. I'm not sure that.
It's a big assumption,
I'm
but
not
it's a
sure
good
that's-
possibility.
It's possible, but
And-
I mean, it could just as well have been people that weren't inside the situation.
That's right, but the information that came out as direct, accurate, and quickly as it did come out suggests very strongly that at least some of the people in the group are very close to the situation.
Well, you say in the group, but we don't know.
But we don't know.
No, it could have been one person that said the group.
Well,
And
I-
it could be somebody, because they didn't put a name to it,
Yeah.
it could be somebody who has an issue. And it's,
Right, I understand that. One thing that I want to connect here, a couple of dots, and particularly for you, Robin, because you have taken an interest, and I'm grateful and pleased, in diversity in this town. And that became a big town issue recently when some people of color looked around and confronted the town part of our community and said, you know, you have 139 people working for you, and not one is a minority. And in fact, if you probably went down, I've been involved on the municipal side for the last 20 years, and it seems pretty damn close that in that entire 20-year history, there hasn't been one. And this is that when we say too casually that this is a small town, this acceptance of this notion that we're a small town, and I know it, you don't burn your bridges in this town because 30 years later you're going to walk into an office and there's the person that you insulted 30 years before. So I understand that situation very well, and cousins and friends and family. And it's unavoidable that these relationships will appear. The issue is not that we have a relationship in the school. It's A, what the relationship is, and that it wasn't revealed to us to consider as part of this issue. And so I see this, I don't feel that there were any bad intentions or ill intentions or anything going on. We just did what we always do. And we have to stop and consider what we always do. And think that maybe we have to do a little better. And it seems to me when I said, Lyle, that maybe it needs a little bit more, maybe when you get into a situation where the relationships are this close in the same workplace, the committee itself is appointed from a different school. Or to the best of our ability, a committee that would be qualified to do it and least and be as far away from all of the principals involved.
So I'd like to just point out that I don't agree that we just did what we always do. I think that's the reason we're having this discussion, is that what we do normally do is this process of making sure that the candidate is not interviewed by the family relative. We did actually do that here, but the part that's missing is that it wasn't said to the board. So to say that we did what we always do is half right and half wrong. And to make sure that we're clear on a policy, I hear you that maybe it should be even a stronger policy that could be up for discussion. Andy, I did see you with a comment, maybe I know you want, just want to point out, I want to let the board first, I'm sorry.
I just was going to say basically what you just said, that a lot of what you said is really speculative, and we could all speculate for endlessly. And I think that our focus, we have the policy, but I didn't bring my policy manual with me, but I did look it over a couple of times, including this morning. And we basically are responsible to make sure there's a hiring process in place and that it's carried out. And I think we have to talk about whether that happened in executive session. And that's kind of it. And I think it's an excellent suggestion that if there is a familial relationship, that extra care be taken to the people that are doing the hiring are aware of it and at least likely to be influenced by that. I also think that it's true that there are lots of people that are related that work in our school districts. And so it comes up, and if it's handled properly, it's fine. I think well, we'll do that later, but I'm
Can
not
I
as
ask,
concerned.
are we going to have a discussion of this in executive session?
Well,
That's up to
I
us.
that we do.
Yeah, that's up to
Because
us.
I feel like I'm having trouble formulating my sentences without making it identifying, so
Perfect.
I think I just say
So,
everything
wait.
else I have to say.
My next question was, for my original comments, were there any questions from the administrators that you wanted to ask? Then there were a couple questions that I thought we should do more in open session here. One of the general questions that came up, one was the familial part that we already been discussing. Another two though, the job description required a specific degree. The letter states that the candidate did not have that degree completed, I think, if I remember correctly. Is this normal, and would somebody like to address that question?
I would say normal, but not unusual. We get candidates that apply for jobs, and part of our interview process is, according to your resume, you have this, we're looking for this, do you have a plan to get to this? So I would say, and principals are in interviews more often than I am at this point, I don't know. Probably every time we have an opening, there's at least one or two candidates that we're asking, what is your plan to get to what we want?
And then the second question is that the posted job description required a specific license, and the statement again was that the candidate did not have a license completed.
And again, that happens, we have minimally right now, WSESU, 10 to 12 people that don't have the license. Anyone coming in from another state won't have, most likely won't have the license. According to the state, they are given a provisional license as long as they meet certain criteria, and then they have 2 years to get the license. If after 2 years they don't, then we let them go.
Okay.
Jill, on that, I think we also need to, there is a little ambiguity in the ad that went out. It actually begins.
Hold on a second. I don't think we can say anything about the specific position in the ad.
No, I'm talking about how we write an ad and where trouble, it hasn't got to do necessarily with this position. What we did was list the requirements for this job. It said minimum qualifications, and it listed about 5 or 6 different things. Number 1 was an MSW. A little bit under that,
This is the part where I'm not sure that we can be naming these specific things because it identifies the position that we're talking about and then that identifies the person.
well, what we did was
So I
just
feel like
say
if
that
you
it
want to
wasn't
get that specific
necessary.
with it, we should save this discussion
Okay.
for our
And I
executive
definitely
session.
want to talk about this in the executive concept.
Well, okay, I'm gonna try to help you, Spoon, here. Your comment, I still would like to address in open session as much as possible. The comment is, how do we write an ad? And if we say that, for instance, a master's degree in teaching is required for a teaching position, then that's what's required, or it's not. That's your point, that you're getting at.
That's part of it, and more a part of it also is one of the things that felt like it was becoming apparent to me is that we as a school district are very much at the beginning of introducing this whole social work field into our schools. And I don't think we're really clear. I wonder, for
So we need
instance,
to be careful with your descriptions.
I'm
I
interested.
feel like if we're gonna get into the specifics of this job, we have to do it in an executive session.
No, I don't think this is at all specific.
I
It
think
is
you're-
specific,
you're-
because there's only one job, it's that role.
Jill,
It's
I
only
asked you
one
to
job.
rule on this, so we can move on as a chair.
You've made a motion to move into executive session for a.
No, I meant to whether this
You
is.
had made a motion that you wish to do that. Would you state your motion, please? To move into executive session.
Are we ready? Let's make sure we're ready to do it.
If you're going to continue down this vein, we're going to have to go into executive session.
Okay, well, that's what I'm asking is to,
So,
Just
Spoon,
to-
either you need to stop down this vein and we'll continue
All
down
right.
the session, or we'll go into
Well, then
personal.
let's,
Go into executive
then I'm
session.
ready to go into executive session.
So that's your motion to discuss a confidential personnel matter is the statute that we cite.
We need to invite the.
We need a second.
Second.
And then we need to decide who all we are inviting. My preference, if I can add to the motion, would be to invite everyone that's sitting in this room at this point.
Second.
I would like, I see a little bit differently. I would like to begin the session
We can ask people to leave afterwards, but I'd
with
like to-
nobody but ourselves. And then add people as our discussion requires that information that we need. Because I think we need to decide for what we
Okay, that's your opinion.
want to talk about.
I want to hear from others. Is that the way you'd like to go,
I think
Dave?
we should start among ourselves and then see what we need help with.
Kim?
I think we can start with everybody.
Robin?
I mean, I don't have very much experience with this, so I don't really know what to say.
Nobody does. That's why I spent so many hours with
Right.
the lawyer.
I mean, if there's, fine, we can start just the 5 of us.
Okay, so the motion's been made to start the executive session by ourselves. Do we want Lyle or just the board? What you're saying, just the board?
Just the board to
Just the
start.
board. All in favor of going into executive session?
You said the thing about personnel.
We already did, that's
Oh.
that statute. Okay, we're back on. Present from executive session, we've dealt with the personnel matter to our satisfaction and feel confident in the process that was handled. You know, I don't think we've even approved the minutes at this
No.
point. So let's just,
I move we approve the minutes and the warrants.
Seconded.
all in favor?
Aye.
That's done. We're not doing policy council, we've already had that meeting. Energy committee has not met. So alternative governance subcommittee, the Act 46 Agency of Education recommendations came out on Friday. I'm assuming you have not met as an alternative
No, I
governance
think
subcommittee?
we probably will. I don't know if I don't think it'll be formally alternative. I don't know. I mean,
So maybe
there still
the
is a
committee
process.
is expanding.
that-
Well, you let us know.
I doubt that.
Well, if it's still a formal
Yeah.
alternative governance subcommittee,
We'll follow the.
I guess we let that go for right now. I was going to ask the question whether we still want to have an alternative governance subcommittee official stance on that for
I
our
would
board.
assume because it's the state board that makes the final decision,
Right.
and there is still the appeal process that the alternative governance or any board can go to the state board meetings and make their case. So I would.
Because there'll be one, well, I guess you could go to any of them, but they're gonna do them
Yeah.
like
Last
they did
one
the
was
others.
supposed to
be September,
In early
ours.
September.
Ours, southern Vermont, we don't know where. It may not be here, it could be
Could be.
Springfield, it could be.
Carolyn Partridge wants something with it.
Yes, I saw
It could be a
that.
window.
Finance committee, executive committee updates.
Well, we tabled it at the SU meeting, the executive, because we want to see,
Yeah, so that's
right,
for
but
these two that were at our
Yes.
SU meeting.
it was tabled just to wait and see what the OE and everybody comes back with. The finance committee does meet tomorrow. The finance committee was approved by the SU board because the transportation bids were coming in, hopefully by yesterday.
Yes.
Today. And instead of convening the entire SU board, they authorized the finance committee to approve the bids, which we're reviewing tomorrow. So that way Frank has time to compile the information.
Two things that I think come to bid this year. One is audits. Is that, I think
I
that's,
don't know, I haven't heard back on
I will
The
ask
town-
tomorrow.
okay, the town put it out to bid
Okay.
a couple of years ago and saved $30,000 on the audit. One, this company came and looked at the books. It's going to take very long. And gave us a price that nobody else could match. And we checked with them, are you sure? And they did it last year, and it's worked out.
So maybe
definitely worked out good. And the other is a few years, is the snow plowing goes out again. In the past, some of the smaller companies that applied that were thousands of dollars less were not considered because, well, they're small, they can't handle it. And as it turns out, the way those smaller people work is that they all work together and they can handle it because they've got somebody else's. So if that comes up, ask about the lowest bid to actually explore that.
And just so everybody, the SU meeting, we did approve the food, the
Yeah.
food, the cafe,
Cafe
yes,
services
the
thing.
cafe
So we will
services,
have food.
yes.
We will have food,
Yes.
not like SIT is over here. Diversity is not met again, right?
No.
Next one. No other committees, administrative reports, noteworthy accomplishments. So due to the hour, it's the end of the year, so is there anything we should really know from Jerry, you're first?
I have a
Okay, what's that?
Anything special we should know about this person?
I'm gonna tell you as much as I can. Back in maybe, no, I'm just kidding. So this is for the music position at Oak Grove, so you remember?
That's .6.
.6, so Andy Davis is retiring, he's a .4 doing general music, choral music, and Julie Ackerman Holmes was a .1. And a couple years ago, I went to the board when we decided to try to have one music teacher at our schools that could do all. So with Andy's retirement, now I have a .6 position. So I'm going to pass these along to you.
So Jerry, who was doing, Andy was doing .4 and who was doing the
And
other?
Julie Ackerman Hovis, who's .9, I guess.
So she's .2.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so she's
Yeah,
at,
sorry.
it's only,
She's gonna
wait,
be
4
just
and
All right.
1, 8 was 6.
3 days, 2 days a Monday. So,
So wait, she's been doing .2 for you and .8 now, and so now she's going to full-time with you?
superintendent.
Correct. So Andy Davis was with us, has been with us for .2. So when Andy's retiring, he's retiring from Oak Grove and Green Street. So Julie will take on.
Hand over.
Right.
And over, yeah.
Okay.
And they're just consolidating the people.
Yeah.
So I'm presenting Kate Billings. Kate is from Washington State, it's a long way away. She has 2 bachelor's degrees, one in English and one in music, from Western Washington University. She has 4 years of teaching experience I did this on Google so I would know how to pronounce it, and now I'm not going to remember how. I don't know, whatever. School district in Washington. A year, as you can read there, a high school English teacher, then elementary, and then she's been at the 5-8 middle school for 2 years. So all within the same school district out there. She is relocating this summer into the southern New Hampshire's southern Vermont area. So some of her references, you can read references on this particular summary from her 2 principals. We did have 12 applicants with 2 different rounds of interviews. So we had about half of those applicants in the first round. We interviewed 4 people, I think, in that round of interviews. And only were interested in one. That person chose not to continue to pursue the offer probably for part-time, because part-time and stuff. So then we opened it up again, and we got more applicants, and then in this last time we interviewed 2 by Skype, another person from Arizona, Kate from Washington, and then 2 that were fairly local. And the committee has chosen Kate Billings.
And she's going to teach general music and band?
She
Or do you
will
have a separate
do-
band teacher?
No, she will be doing all of that.
And so she'll be a total of
Six, 3 days a
with
week.
band and choir. Chorus.
General music, pre-K to 6. Chorus for 6, and instrumental music with band lessons and then band. And that's currently what Julie will be doing at Green Street, and I think it's somewhat what one of your positions.
Miss Davenport.
Sorry?
Bree Davenport is
Oh,
the
yeah.
same situation. Okay.
So currently she's doing choral music in her current job. She's doing choral music, general music in 4, 5, 8. And I mean, it's a big school, so they have like for their 5th grade instrumental band, there are 2 teachers. So she does some of the instrumental lessons, and then she kind of conducts that particular band because of the number of students. So she's doing, has experience with both. And that's what we were finding is that some candidates were really strong in one area and not necessarily in the other. But she
30
comes
years she'll
highly,
play every instrument we got.
she comes highly recommended. She was, fireball on, got up at, for the time difference, we were interviewing her at like 8:30.
Has she been here?
5:30 in the morning,
So it
that's
was
her
like
time.
5:30 in the morning, yeah. So we kind of watched the sun come up behind her, and
Has she been here yet?
I don't know, I didn't really ask that question. But she was, they have a plan to, so she's gonna be working on her master's, so she was happy that she was looking for part-time work.
Okay, perfect.
So that she can work on her master's.
I move we accept Kate Billings, the .6 music teacher for Oak Grove.
Seconded?
All in favor?
Aye.
Hand these back in.
So before you hand it in, this is the information sheet that I proposed for the principals, so that we have.
Listening there?
So as we go on, over the next few months, looking at this, if you feel like there's other pertinent information that is not reflected here, you can let me know, we can add it, but I felt like this was a good start, so at least we have all the pertinent information in one place, because usually when we get a resume, it's pages, and there's no time for us to go through it really, so.
So I guess just on other information, that would, anything that would come up.
Yeah, that would be.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. Kelly, or Andy.
You have the report, right?
I do.
Yes, so Kelly, we get out the report. I don't think there's anything on there that you can't do yourself.
Can I share one really quick thing, just because I'm really proud of it?
Except that one thing that Kelly wants.
She's saying it whether
I
you
know
like it or not.
we're late, but I'm like, okay. it's 2 minutes.
Share it.
So in the winter, I told you about a grant that we received through Blue Cross to do a cooking class.
Yeah.
And we just had a really successful culminating night of the Culinary Academy, where Chef Allie of Food Services and her assistant presented dinner with the kids, and they did appetizers, an entree, and desserts, and it was super well attended. And the kids and the parents talked about how they're cooking at home together. So it's just really exciting to see that come to
Give it to the
fruition,
name.
and I definitely want to continue that in the fall. So the fall is looking like crock pot cooking weather. I just wanted to,
That was what it was
it's on
yesterday.
here, but I wanted you to not say what's Culinary Academy. I wanted to just point out that that was a really nice experience for all the kids and parents. And sorry, Andy.
Okay, that was fine. No worries. So do you have a resignation, which I'll pass to you? It's Colleen Carasquillo, who is our grade 1 academic, grade 1 academic support teacher, which means she's a Title I teacher. She is resigning. She lives in Chesterfield, New Hampshire, and she now has 3 children. And an issue that a lot of our younger teachers are facing, particularly those who live in New Hampshire, is that they're on different school schedules. So when we're on, for example, February and April break, when we're off, their kids are not. Their kids are off the week after, and so on and so forth. So it's an issue that we're aware of, we can't do anything about. But she was hired to work in Chesterfield, where she lives, where her children go to school. So we have that position open. And if you have done your due diligence and you're on the website, you would have noticed that we didn't post that. The position's not on there right now, it's a grade 3. And the reason is that when that position did become available, was posted, which is the contractual agreement, a grade 1 teacher of ours, a classroom teacher, requested that position. She applied for that position. And so we moved her into that position. So another grade 1 teacher went into that position. But we were undone. A grade 3 teacher has now been moved into that grade 1 vacancy. So now that opening has become that grade 3.
3rd grade classroom teacher.
Yes.
We kind of need flow charts, yeah.
Exactly. I have one all drawn out, but given the hour, I thought that's fine. Actually, this is, I mean, we did draw that out because when you start thinking about it, it gets confusing. So that is open. We also have another opening, which you're aware of. That's the grade 5 1-year opening. This Team Biolsi, has been hired as the SU math coach for next year. And that's a 1-year.
I've accepted that.
And you accepted that. So those are our present openings.
So, Spoon, did you have a question, or do we need to accept this
Yeah,
resignation?
no, I just have, I wanted to ask you, Andy, perhaps you know this person resigning said she's taking a position as a literary specialist.
Yeah.
What is that? Any idea?
Yep, of course. I hope I do. So It's very similar to what she's presently doing. However, in our schools, most of our academic support people work with students who need support in reading, who are often struggling readers. But they spend with us a portion of their day also doing math. So in Chesterfield, they have the luxury of having someone just focusing on math.
it just popped in because you said that she was taking a position of a literary specialist and it was going to challenge her growth. And I just,
I didn't ever say it was gonna challenge you.
all right, I'll drop it.
It's basically the same job, but in Chesterfield.
Right.
Oh, she says it.
She said it in her letter.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion to accept Ms. Karis.
I move that we accept Colleen Carrasquillo's resignation with regret.
Great regrets, because full disclosure, this was my daughter's degree. All in favor?
I don't know if you seconded it.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
I have two more quick things. One, so your next meeting, June 20th, and you won't be here. Typically, the board authorizes the admins to hire in the summer because there'll be positions that'll need to be filled and the board will not be meeting. So you may want to make note of that. The other thing is that I'm sitting here thinking tonight that I've attended somewhere in the order of 650 board meetings in my career, and this is the next to last. And
it's such a short one.
And the last one, this is memorable. The last one I know you won't be here for.
I know, I was going to point that out myself.
Right, so I did want to just thank the board for all your support over the years. Been 12 years here working with you. Dave, you've been on the board most of my time.
Yeah, pretty much.
You're
Second year.
in jail for maybe 7 years now, Joe? 6
I
years?
really don't have.
Quite a while. So, anyway, I appreciate that, and all your support. And, Brattleboro really is an excellent school system, and, we have a lot to be proud of, and all the things we do for our children in Brattleboro. And a lot of those things are pretty unusual, pretty remarkable. Things like a social work, and we have foreign language, we have such great band programs, and, great support programs for all of our kids. So, but we couldn't do that without the support of the board, both at the board meeting, but also through the budget. And over the years, there haven't been too many things that I've seen principals bring to the board that got rejected. Things that were going to cost money, positions, whatever. If we could articulate it, an idea, make a case that it would benefit our kids, the board always supported that. May not have been that year, may have been have something to work at, but the board always supported that. And that's really important. And I argued this many years, that the schools are what separate us from communities that surround us that are undesirable, where middle classes just left. And if we lose the schools in this community, this will be a town that most of us will not want to be in. So, it's late, so I just want to say thank you.
I think that we all would say thank you to you as well. I'm not here this next time, so I figured I couldn't really say a whole lot this time because you'll still be here for one of my own personal appreciation. Hard to follow. Deb, I'm not sure if you have anything else.
I'm good. I did my director's report earlier.
And Mark,
Report.
Jerry, did you skip your report?
She did not copy it.
So it's
on the copy, or was
It's on her phone. She doesn't
Yes,
have
she did. We can look at it on her phone.
Except there's no Wi-Fi.
And most of Brattleboro's phones are down all day, so.
I'm also going to send around a nice worksheet that Wyndham Wood Heat put together that details the project at the boiler project at Green Street this year. I think most, like Andy said, most of the things on that report you can read. I do have 2 hires to present. start with sixth grade teacher.
Hey, Mark, just
Yes.
before you, the DCF reports that are on here, is that for just this month or for the whole year?
The month of May.
And these are the, when we made those changes to these reports, we didn't want these DCF and numbers, students, and possible. So we might, all of you guys might need to check with the secretaries or whoever's pulling this to make sure you have the form that, because technically this should be posted, remember we went through them before.
So we won't do it every month, we'll do it
Twice a year, is
twice
that
a
what
year.
we're looking at?
I mean, the number of
Anything-
DCF
how
and
many-
number of students.
Anything that's less than 10, then we need to be really careful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think actually that was, now I'm remembering, that was the decision that if it was less than 10, then you just write less than 10 instead of the exact number,
Yeah.
write less than 10. And then twice a year, we'll talk about how many the actual number is at that time.
But what, didn't we decide movement transfers is okay? Through students and that?
Yeah, as long as we're not putting where.
But that's, it's still.
And grades, and not grades. We did no grades on there either because they're able to.
But you guys are gonna track that in some way, so at the end of the year, we have an idea.
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating to know, you know, are they all going to public schools, private schools, are they leaving the state, or are they choosing to go someplace else?
But those are conversations that are more fruitful when we're talking about all
An
at
aggregate.
large anyway, rather than a month by month. So it would be more helpful to talk about it.
The only thing that I like to know month by month on that is that I had no idea there was so much transience. So to ignore and not say at all that there's kids coming in and out all the time. So we could still say, can't we, 3 kids moved? Can we say that? What did we decide on that?
We can say that as long as we're not saying the grade and where to.
So is that clear to principals that we want to track the where to? And maybe the grades, I don't know if that's as important. but
Not
the-
where, oh yeah, we track it, but
on an
yes.
aggregate, and we get that like once or
Yeah.
twice a year, but we want to know still how many. I think that makes a huge difference in what we need to provide for the kids when we have kids coming in and out, right?
Agreed.
Okay, back to Mark.
Okay, so I'm proposing the hiring of a new sixth grade classroom teacher. Her name is Caitlin Campbell. She's a graduate of Keene State College. For the past 4 years, she's been working at Brattleboro Area Middle School as an academic support teacher. Through the process, reference checks with Keith Lyman, the principal of BAMS, and Julianne Egan, who was a colleague of Caitlin's and is now curriculum coordinator at the SU. She's described by Julianne as a top-tier teacher with incredible work ethic, a teacher leader who will be a great addition to any staff. So we went through interview process with Caitlin, and this was one of those easy ones. It was pretty much a slam dunk after going through. We had 18 resumes, interviewed 5 candidates. She was head and shoulders above the other candidates that we met with. I think she'll be a real terrific addition to the school community.
Just curious why she wants to come to Green Street instead of staying at BAMS.
Well, in the interview, she just spoke of,
I mean, it's
feeling
still,
that-
6th grade is still middle school for a lot of people.
It's in the first sentence of her cover letter, actually.
I'm just giving you a page. Oh, to return to elementary school environment, so that was it.
She saw the light.
I move we hire Caitlin Campbell for 6th grade teacher for Green Street School.
And all in favor?
Aye.
We said this one back, so one more coming around, so you have 2 hires?
Kindergarten. Yeah, we're gonna need to do personnel issue.
Another executive session.
An executive session,
So we'll wait.
so.
All right, so let's go back to the regularly scheduled agenda. Which I've lost in a quickly. Other unfinished business. Yay.
No.
1% applications are tabled yet again. Apparently there's discussion of how to make it come into the budget we want to see. right? So we're waiting. Topics for summer agenda. We've talked today about a couple things, right?
Yes, so I have EES policy review and EES salary comparison with Brattleboro Town School District.
And then I think we kind of,
Well, I'm thinking about what we want this meeting, typically it's like a planning and not necessarily retreat, but, and I don't know if a policy review is something we want to do in that context or not.
But is this the meeting that I want to start talking seriously about
I don't know what you.
our goals? How do we assess or measure our goals?
So I'm just questioning, maybe we want to have that on a regular agenda instead of
Okay.
in this meeting. We can talk about that next week.
Do we have to have this back in by a certain date?
No.
Okay. Just one.
So we can do the policy review, but can you all look at that and do it by May 20th, or the June 20th meeting?
So if we decide that there's more discussion than what we are going to be able to do in the meeting, we could.
So you're saying put that topic on the June 20th agenda, not
Yeah,
that
so we-
August?
Yes.
yeah.
Yep.
So the EES salary and SU salary, that does seem like something for planning that we're trying to,
Yeah.
that was a goal
Yes.
for a long time, so we'll leave that as planning. And then Spoon's,
Measuring
just
goals.
measuring goals. Can you tell me more what you're saying with that, Spoon? I'm not sure if I know.
Well, how do we assure ourselves that we are giving our kids a good education? Until we define more clearly what a good education is, and then begin to say, well, how can we measure whether we're really doing that?
So you have two topics. What is a good education, and then how do we measure it?
Yeah, I mean, I assume if the SU has goals,
Yes?
that they are speaking to what we think a good education is.
Well, why don't we start with that if we have something in our WSESU?
We have a
Materials.
continuous improvement plan that has our
Okay.
goals stated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure, maybe Spoon, we should have that circulated around and then see whether that's really a topic, because there are already continuous improvement plans for each one of the schools. And there's an SU plan that we just approved so that they're all written down in the same way. And then there's goals that are being measured under each one
Right,
of
there's
those.
action steps of where, how.
So I'm not-
Success.
I'm not sure, Spoon, that your topic isn't already done.
But I think what,
Well,
I think to do, I
then
think
I'm
there
not
may be
being
things you would
clear
like to.
about what I'm after here. You know, like, we like to believe we are teaching our kids to think. I sent that article around. And it was a Stanford University did this big study of kids and found out that when they were presented with news articles, they couldn't figure out whether they were reading something fake or phony. What they were trying to measure was whether kids could think.
Well,
And
I think
they
it would
found-
maybe be helpful if we narrow the scope of this a little bit. So if you want to talk about critical thinking, are we teaching critical thinking? And maybe we could look at what are the current goals and around that and see
That
if
may
we
be
can see
one
something.
thing, critical
Yeah.
thinking might be one thing.
And we also need to make sure we remember that we are just talking about elementary school. That we're not talking about critical thinking or what high school or middle school are reading or consuming, because we are responsible for the
So maybe
elementary school.
there's a question right there, was whether kids, I mean, this sort of becomes pertinent now in that issue we had the other day. Was the program the kids saw on Palestine and Israel appropriate? And the issue was, could the kids apply critical thinking to that? And so it does reach down. And so maybe one
And
is,
it's in the quality standards too. I mean, that the steps that are appropriate.
Okay,
at
so-
various ages.
so if it's there,
Everybody
how do we-
needs
So
to
once
look at
we're,
that. Yeah.
so
Is there some way to measure?
focused too.
That's the question.
Yeah.
How do we know? I guess that's what we're gonna look at.
And maybe we do need to look at the quality standards, some of the standards that we're teaching, because that's laid out very clearly what it is that we're teaching at each grade level and when we're teaching critical thinking at what levels. And
I guess my question is when we say we all need to look at that, I personally feel like I've seen a lot of these plans, but I've been on the board for a long time, you know? And I feel like and I've seen how they're being measured, and I feel like there's a very strong framework. What the state says we have to teach, the nation says we have to teach, and then the goals, I mean, there's more thought process in this than I ever imagined when I first came on the board. So
And
to
more
me,
detail.
spending a lot of our planning meeting on what we want to look at, this is already done for this school district. Am I the only board member that feels that way
Well,
though?
I don't think it would hurt necessarily to go over some, or to get, or to look at what's is in some of the quality standards, but I think maybe the way to, well,
Well, all we
but I
did,
understand what it's saying, and there is a ton of stuff, and.
I actually think this would
and
be
being
helpful
clear-
to look at because it intersects with what we're gonna be learning about at our training that we have in September. Because critical thinking is a really big piece of kind of the culturally responsive learning that we want the kids to be doing. So I think that if we just could maybe take that one topic and look at it, that it could be a good use of our time. I think if we just say like, the topic is like, what makes a good education? I feel like that's like too broad and philosophical of a conversation to be worthwhile to have at a single board meeting.
I think it might be worthwhile to have Paul, one of our curriculum coordinators, come and present on our elementary report card and talk about how it relates to the Common Core state standards. And then maybe have Julianne come to give a preview or just a little education about proficiency-based education and how that's being used at the middle and high school level, so you can see the scope.
Yeah, I don't, there's a lot you raise up, and another whole passel of questions about Common Core, et cetera, so that's for a longer discussion.
The August meeting needs to be on stuff that we need to plan, so
That we're gonna want to, yeah.
one of the things we
look
talked
at
about
over the year.
before was that we were gonna have some sort of a space study and needs study, and you administrators were looking at that, and we're gonna
we
report
have
back.
been- Yeah, we've been looking at that.
So, to me, that would be a good
Is
time.
that moot now?
Why would it be moot?
Well, we're not gonna, I mean, well, if we're gonna be merged, for us to be adding space to buildings when the we is gonna be bigger, is gonna include places where there's capacity. I'm not so sure.
I think it's, even because of that, I think it's even better. If we know, like, what the process is for us, we're the only ones in the school district that have several buildings, right? I mean, even BUHS has got
Yeah.
kind of defined buildings. So if we can come up with a plan of how we would like to utilize our spaces and the process that we're going through, it's probably valid for everybody. I think it's still valid.
Yeah.
I mean, I
I
feel
thought
like
we were gonna be talking
until
about
the day
building new
that
stuff.
like the board is dissolved, we should keep on doing the work that we think would be valuable if we were to continue into perpetuity.
And on that same vein, I mentioned to Lyle earlier today that I have a bit of a concern that's gone on my whole time that I've been on the board, that we talk about the decline of students, we talk about the numbers, and our process doesn't lend us to looking at this very critically. We have positions that we take the resignations in and we officially accept them, and then as a general course of how this works, we hire that position back rather automatically. And we don't have a time when and I understand, like, and I brought that up to Andy, that's why I was joking of the, well, if you looked, yes. Because right now, before we even had the resignations, I happen to be digging around trying to find this plan about the outdoor classroom that we talked about the last meeting. And looking for the capital plan, and there's a lot of stuff on the website, I couldn't find the capital plan, but I found the hirings that were listed, the job postings. And so, if we ever want to look at exactly what we need for space and what we need for teachers and whether we're at the right size, we don't have a process for that. we get resignations, we post hirings. When do we say as a board, wait a minute, is this what we really need to be right staffed? So to me, that's a topic to look at during the August meeting, and especially if we're talking about size and space and what we have and what makes sense and where we want to go with pre-K and all that.
Actually, that can be looked at any time in the whole year. It's a, we could be doing it this meeting, next, any meeting at all. It's an ongoing.
We don't have a
topic
process.
mentioned. Yeah, so we can have in one of any meeting at all that we choose, we can have an item to talk about how do we determine our level of staffing.
I think, Phil, what you're talking about is well, a process, and it would certainly be useful to try and develop one.
And honestly,
I think we should, one of the things we tried to do last year was create our work plan. And it seemed like we got a good start on that, and then we seemed like we got backed up quite a bit. But that seems like a meeting, a topic for an agenda, talking about. So what is it that we're going to think about for criteria for hiring, so that we're not just automatically rehiring every position that's either resigned or through a resignation. But that should go on to an agenda. On our work plan, as Moon said, it could be at any time, but, so that we don't lose it, we need to have our work plan, put it in there so that it's on our agenda. The other thing, though, with our work plan, I felt like we ended up with too many topics.
Yes.
I mean, it's 9.
And new ones came along.
And new ones came along.
Yes.
So do we have to have blank meetings where, we have our regular business, but there's some room for us to put in some
Maybe
other
every
topics.
third meeting could be like a catch-up meeting where we just like a doctor's office, fill all those open spaces for the stuff that comes up.
so work plan layout is on our schedule. So you're all saying that the process, creating some sort of a process for hiring and staffing, you don't want to try to tackle that in the August planning meeting, you want to put that on an agenda for another meeting.
Yep.
We might talk a little bit about what we think, in 2 months, we might have thought about it, and have some ideas, but.
I don't feel like that, to know what positions need to be rehired and what can be attritioned or whatever is something that we, as us 5, will know the answer to, but that we need people who can come in and give an expert opinion on that. So that's why I think it should be more on another later meeting.
Right, I'm not suggesting that that's part of my problem. I don't think that the board should ever be making that decision, ever. I think it needs to be in conjunction with the administrators, in conjunction with experts or whatever else. But right now, we have no process, so our
But I feel like
default
deciding
is-
the process should involve other people than us too.
Well, they would be doing it, they're in the planning.
But I mean, what about people like, some sort of consultant or like Paul or somebody that's like not one of our usual people that might have relevant information?
Well, let's do what you're saying, let's
It's a big-
start it.
Yeah,
I mean,
just
I mean,
maybe get a
that's part of-
framework for talking about.
That's part of what an eventual merger also needs to be able to look at. And part of what we talked about as a merger was, well, if we put all these different schools together, then you'll be able to look at how we utilize staff better. But yet, we are several schools and we're not looking at how to utilize staff.
But I think that would be
All the
really
time.
good to do before we're merged anyway, so that we can have an idea of this is what Brattleboro needs. And be
Exactly.
able to advocate for that, or whoever.
And maybe if we find a way
whoever
that's
is on
working
the
great
board.
in Brattleboro, it'll be a great example for all. All right, so that's for our August meeting. Let's see what else is on our great agenda.
I have a couple of things.
Okay, it's time to throw them out then, because I think, oh no, there's one more. The appointment of the board representative to the superintendent
No, I had a couple of things
evaluation.
for the agenda.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
have
I
it.
just was
Oh,
waiting my turn.
go.
And I hadn't thought about this in terms of schools, how do we measure things, and what are we teaching, but we had those, we got the recommendations from the field review, the accommodation recommendations, and I think we
haven't
should,
got back to them.
yeah, I think, and that's the kind of thing you could sit down and look at. There are a couple in there that I would really like to see us very consciously pursue and ask you to develop assessments that can show that we're making progress, that we're getting there. And it may be that the rest of you look through and see other things, and then we have to decide which ones. But but we could probably agree on a couple of things that we want to have as sort of initiatives or things to clearly address in response to the work we're supposed to be doing according to the policy standards. So, going over that and choosing a couple of goals. And the other is the social worker. And this is, I may be remembering this wrong, and this happens more as I'm in my 8th decade now. But I recall when we talked about this, particularly with
Maybe do math there.
Yeah.
8 years old,
Decade.
70.
yeah.
He's not
When you're in your
maybe.
70s, that's your 8th decade. It sounds awful, doesn't
It
it?
does, I
Yes.
don't know why you would say it.
I'm like-
Hang on.
I'm like, you are not that old.
Well, I may have forgotten the plan too. But, and I may have gotten this wrong, but I remember, particularly in conversations with Mark Truhan, that one of the things that we wanted to happen with the social worker was not just to be making sure that services were there and that they were wrapped around and that they were effective, but that we were also providing some support for families to become independent, for the parents to find training programs or book rehab and other things. And it just, I didn't know about this until last night, but there's a similar initiative that Groundworks is working on with youth services in terms of a day job. Well, the thing the town was interested in was a day jobs program, but the point is that they're working on that same kind of a topic, but I'm sorry, that's a digression. When we talked about wanting a social worker, that was one of the things that we talked about.
So
It wasn't-
basically, you want to look at the social worker with, and
Yeah,
collaboration with other towns or
well,
what that position
yeah,
is?
but particularly in terms of getting the parents, getting the people out of poverty. It's, it's one thing to get all the services and to do everything we can for them, but to also get them on, whatever we can do to help them become independent of all the services and all the things that, basically promoting the dignity of work, but providing because that's a solution. I mean, the services that we give and the things that are on the job description, those are all things that are going to help people cope, but they're not necessarily going to put somebody on the path toward being able to be independent, families to be independent. And we really did talk about wanting this to help people actually get out of poverty, not just get them certain services. So I just wanted to have us talk
On the
about that
list.
more broadly and see if.
All right, so, more agenda?
That's it. Those are my two.
Appointment of board representative to Superintendent Evaluation Committee, the SU committees, what do we call ourselves? Group was talking and they voted $1,000 to be spent to put together a new superintendent evaluation in conjunction with the VSBA.
VSBA.
So there needs to be representation from each of the boards to help figure out what sort of questions we want to ask. Who would like to be on that
So
superintendent
that's generic
evaluation?
and not necessarily.
It'll be for us,
Yeah.
specific.
We'll use it, but it's,
Right.
yeah.
It's a generic
It's tailored
form
to
that we're going to
our
take.
supervisor union.
And we're paying them $1,000 to help us tailor it and
And help
tabulate,
facilitate.
facilitate and tabulate.
And what do we have already in existence that we've been using all over?
There was a form that Ron has used for many years, the finance committee, you can describe it if you want.
Or why would we, I guess my question is why do we need to change?
It's much less specific than the way that the VSBA recommends, or not that they say you could do it our way, but like
Right.
their way is way more specific with lots of sub-goals and
It's a
action
rubric,
steps.
right,
Yes.
so that there are specific criteria for each.
Everyone thought it was better.
And
The
we wanted
VSBA
to try
was
it, and see we have, new superintendent, we wanted to
better.
try it and do a combination, because we do like aspects of what Ron has always used, but we do, we didn't want to just use what we've always used. We wanted to try something.
So we
Different
need
at the same
someone
time.
to help figure out what it is that will be different and same.
Yeah, because they
You
want.
sound like you wanna be on the committee.
Want to be on the committee too?
Do you?
I was thinking,
Yes.
you're more
I'll be involved.
skeptical,
I'm
but
happy to. I'm happy
Kim
to.
wants to, Spoon wants
Yeah.
to?
Yeah.
that'd be great,
Well,
that'd be
it's
great.
up to you.
Put him, stick him on VSBA.
Who's doing it, Spoon or Kim?
Spoon's
only one?
welcome to.
What is it to compare the two?
They want to know what we're looking for, so it's to get together with representative from each of the boards, and they want to know what we're looking for, what we hope to retain, what type of questions, and
So you're on that, you want to do that?
The School Board Association. Is that
They're
SBA?
gonna write it up,
VSBA.
yeah.
VSBA.
They're gonna write it up for our
Yes.
SU.
They're gonna meet with representatives from the SU and then come up with a.
And it has to be done relatively soon because,
June 19th is the date that
Yeah,
they're
there
first
you go.
meeting,
June 19th
but there
is
will
the
be
meeting.
multiple
there will be
meetings.
multiple meetings, it's not just one meeting.
are you in?
You'll do it.
Perfect.
I'm not entirely sure what I'm doing.
All right.
Isn't that generally true?
I guess if you're asking me to do it, you're not worried about it.
So next, we're striking that from the record too. So next agenda items we've gone through. I have nothing else except that we do need to go into a personnel, possible, definite executive session for a personnel matter if there are no other concerns. Boom.
Yes, I have one other. And that's an observation so that you go on the record and you've heard it. If the merger goes through, I don't know about very different, but it's going to be a different culture that is going to develop. And part of that is, I feel pretty certain, as everybody suspects, an increasing distance between the citizens and their schools. Because there will be, instead of 6 boards handling, there'll be 1 board, and it will involve 4 towns, maybe ultimately 5 towns, I don't know. One of the things that is going to occur, and I feel pretty sure of this, is there is going to become, after these mergers, an increasing amount of pressure to privatize schools. And there's going to be an increasing vulnerability to allowing that to happen because of the increased remoteness between the citizens and their schools. And it's something to be thinking about right now because in many ways it's already underway. And but at some point it's going to become more of a formality when there are actual proposals to begin doing that. Period.
Okay, on that, no one else has any other comments, observations? So Andy, I'm sorry, you had asked me to keep it till 8 o'clock. I've only missed that by
Well,
an
you
hour and a
did.
half.
Oh, no, wait, 9:30. Close enough.
We're,
Your final board
Mountain
meeting was-
Standard Time, we are good.
Yeah. All right, so
Say
we're
it's Jill
going,
and Illinois time.
we're going into executive, I need a motion to go into executive session for
So
personnel matters.
Second?
And we would like to invite Mark to stay to have a discussion. And the rest of you,
There will be a decision when we come back out.
there will be a decision when we come back out.
Sorry, Rich.
Well, when we come out, we have to make a decision.
Right, we have to.
Right. but
So
he
good night
has
to the
stay
rest of you.
to film that part of it.
You may go. On your way rejoicing, I believe.
It's a big deal. Will you send me the rest of?
Everybody say yes.
All in favor of rising from executive
Aye.
session at 8:50? 9:50? What time is it really? 9:50, yes.
No,
9:50 rising.
All right,
And then, make a motion.
I move we accept the separation agreement.
Seconded?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then we have one final act of business, which would be the hiring, Mark.
Yep, so I'm presenting to you the proposed hiring of a new kindergarten classroom teacher. The candidate that the committee chose is named Kayla Savage. She's a graduate of Keene State College, just graduated actually. Bachelor of Science in Education of Early Childhood Development. In terms of experience, she's been student teaching over the past 2 years. She's a student teacher at Benjamin Franklin in Keene, New Hampshire, Winston Crowdy Child Development Center in Brattleboro, and Mount Caesar Elementary School. References that I had checked included Catherine Abbott, who's a first grade teacher at Benjamin Franklin School, Marcia Woodruff, who's a teacher at Vernon Elementary School, and Seth Dio, who's the director of the Vernon Recreation Department. Spoke with all three of those individuals. They were all supremely high on Kayla. Cooperating teacher Catherine Abbott described Kayla to be the best student teacher she has ever worked with in her career. That includes mentoring up to 12 student teachers. When I called Catherine, this was very sweet. When I called Catherine and introduced myself as making a reference call on behalf of Kayla Savage, she burst with emotion. You just heard this, "Whoa, I love that kid," over the phone. And she just kept talking for like 5 minutes straight about the experience she had working with Kayla. She described her as a young teacher leader. She took on the leadership role of all the student teachers. She created little PLCs where student teachers could reflect and talk with each other about their experiences. So she's young, right out of college. But I was, convinced through the interview process, and then after the reference call, especially with that call with Catherine, who's her cooperating teacher, feel really excited to move forward with our kindergarten program and some new energy.
It's a really glowing reference though.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's a lot.
Is that Vermont certification just a formality?
that's a requirement.
That's not to worry about though, she'll have it.
It's not. She indicates in her letter she's awaiting approval of her New Hampshire certification. She received that yesterday.
Yeah.
She received that in the mail. In New Hampshire and Vermont have a reciprocal license.
Oh.
So she'll just have to apply for Vermont, throw over, cough up some money, and she'll be good to go for the start of the school year.
We have a motion?
I move we hire Kayla Savage for kindergarten for Green Street School.
Second.
She can help out with
All
music.
in favor?
Yeah.
I
Aye.
move we adjourn at 9:51.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.